Hello everyone, welcome to the Storyist. Today I will share with you a story about a black grandmother with dementia who was arrested by a white cop. Stay until the end of the video to find out what happened. Michael is a police officer who is very dedicated to fulfilling his job. He is in his 40s and has no wife or kids. Many people who know him think that he just failed in forming a family. But in reality, he just wants to spend his life serving the community. Ever since he became a police officer 15 years ago, he has worked extremely hard so he can one day become the chief of their district. It has been a dream since he stepped into his chief's office desk the first time he became a cop. His chief told him that he sees a potential in him that is not present in any other of his colleagues. And he stuck with that comment for a decade and a half. And now that the district's chief officer is about to retire, he wants to prove him right and choose him to be his replacement. Michael has been training really hard for this moment. In a few days, the chief officer will be stepping down from his position and will choose someone to be the next chief. For almost 20 years, Michael had been working hard for this day. And it is the very reason why he doesn't have a family now, unlike his colleagues. The day before his retirement, the chief calls everyone to gather in front of his office. Michael is extremely excited, thinking of how many ways he can react when the chief calls his name as his replacement. "I will give you all 24-hour surveillance. I want to make sure first that the person who will replace me will be the person in this room who has the best compassion and care for everyone in this town," the chief officer said. Michael laughs, in his mind thinking that if there's anyone who cares the most about their community, it is him. He even gave up having his own family, just so he can give his entire life for the community. After that, the chief adjourned their meeting, and all of the police officers went separate ways, back on the road to wherever stations they are patrolling and reporting. As for Michael, he goes to the street he has been patrolling for several weeks. He used to be assigned in the graveyard, where all the worst crimes happen. But just a few weeks ago, he was transferred to a little area where the worst he had to deal with is loitering. But he is happy, thinking that maybe the reason why he was put there was because he is about to become chief. Michael walks around the area whistling, thinking how he will rearrange the chief's office when he is the one sitting there. As he walks past the convenience store, he sees a black grandmother talking to a child with a lollipop. The child is a white girl that is obviously not related to her, but the black grandmother is holding her hand. This alerts Michael quickly, thinking immediately that the grandmother must be kidnapping the girl. But instead of straight out arresting the grandma, he walks up to her and questions her first. "Hey, Grandma, do you have a second?" Michael asks in an authoritative tone. "Yes, officer," the old lady replies politely. "Who is this little girl you are holding?" Michael asks. The grandmother suddenly shifts her emotions. All of a sudden, she looks confused and disoriented. I don't know her," says the old lady. The little girl just continues eating her lollipop like nothing is happening. "What do you mean you don't know? You were just talking to her," Michael says, but his voice is apparently annoyed. The old lady starts to break down and cry. She sits on the floor, covering her ears with her palms. "I said I don't know her!" the grandmother exclaims. The old lady is starting to get too much unwanted attention from the crowd, and Michael harshly makes her stand up. "So you're kidnapping her then? Who are you? Who sent you?" Michael is now screaming in the old woman's ear, and it is making her cry even harder. Meanwhile, the little girl also witnessed the screaming and crying and started crying as well. The old lady keeps saying that she doesn't know the girl and that she doesn't know who she is as well. So Michael immediately thinks that it is a new tactic of kidnappers to steal little white girls. At this point, Michael is convinced that the old woman is kidnapping the little white girl, so he forces the grandmother to come with him to the station. He believes the little girl is lost as well, so he carries the girl into his police car too. While on the drive, the black old lady is begging for him to stop because she wants to use the bathroom. But Michael thinks that might just be a trick, so he keeps driving ahead. But after just a few minutes, he smells urine in his passenger seat, and when he looks back, the grandmother cries while she looks at her dress fully wet. This angers Michael so much that he speeds his driving to get to the police station as soon as possible. After what seemed to be a long drive because of the smell of pee inside the car, they finally arrived at the station. Michael grabs the old lady out of the car and harshly forces her to walk inside the station. Everyone who sees him tells him to chill and take it lightly, because they are worried that Michael is being too harsh on the old lady. But Michael will always tell them, "She's a kidnapper. How harsher can I get?" When Michael arrives at the police station, he places the old lady and the little girl in a small room for interrogation. No one has entered the room yet other than the two, and Michael and one other colleague watch them from the glass window. The little girl is still eating her candy, apparently oblivious of what is happening around her, while the grandmother keeps crying. "Aren't you being a little too harsh on the old woman, Michael?" asks Brandon, his colleague. Michael just laughs at him and says, "That's the exact reason why you won't be the next chief officer, Brandon, because you think this is too harsh," he says, and attempts to leave. But Brandon stops him by the arm. "I'm just saying that woman is still innocent until proven guilty," he says. But Michael just shrugs him off and replies, "I saw how she was kidnapping that girl. In my eyes, she's guilty. End of discussion." And Michael leaves. After a while, the police chief enters the station. At this moment, 2 investigators have been questioning the grandmother, but none of them have answers yet. The grandmother is as lost as they are. And then the chief officer comes inside the interrogation room. Michael is so excited that the chief is present to see his huge win that day. So he enters the interrogation room beside the chief. When the chief sees the grandmother and the little girl, his eyes widen in shock. The little girl turns her head and sees the chief officer. "Daddy!" the girl exclaims. The chief officer welcomes the girl with a light hug. Michael is so shocked about what he just witnessed, but his heart was leaping very high. Does this mean I just saved the chief's daughter from being kidnapped? Michael thinks to himself, already jumping up and down mentally, thinking that he has already secured his spot. But then the police chief walks slowly to the old woman and says, "Mom, come on now. Let's go home." The old woman looks at him and cries once again.
"Honey, they were monsters! That man, he's a monster!"
the grandmother says while crying and pointing to Michael. Michael can't believe what he is witnessing. The grandmother he just arrested was the police chief's mother. Everyone who is watching outside is also wide-eyed. "Chief, I don't understand. Is she your mother?" Michael asks, confused. The chief looks at him in disappointment. "I was an abandoned white boy struggling to live. She is the nicest woman I know. She kept me as her own son, fed me, bathed me, and gave me an education. Yes, she is my mother." Michael apologizes to the chief and says, I didn't know she was your mother, sir, and she doesn't even know her real name. That's why I thought she was a kidnapper." Michael defends himself, but the chief looks at him in the eyes and replies, "She has dementia. If she was white, would you have arrested her for talking to a white girl?" Michael can't give an answer. He regrets what he did, and now he volunteers in charities supporting old people with dementia, as he left his long-pursued career when he got fired from the police department. Brandon became the police chief, contrary to what he thought. But Michael is happier now. He realizes that maybe being a police officer was what he wanted, but not what he needed after all. That's all for today. We hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll see you next time.